Welcome to Ex Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Folks, thank you for joining us on another edition of Ex Machina. Joining me here in the studio is my brother from another mother, Robbie Rip Rains, coming to us live from South Crackalacky. Doc and Steve will not be joining us tonight. Doc is on his way to Texas to teach another class on life saving, and unfortunately, Steve had to work. But hopefully, we'll have both of them with us on Saturday. Robbie, how the heck are you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
As Doc would say, I'm finer than frog hair split four ways.
Pretty fine.
That's pretty fine.
Yeah, just trying to survive. You know how that goes.
I know that exactly well.
Looks like we already got
we already got a pretty full house.
Yeah, already up to 74.
Nice.
And the chat's already moving and flowing. That's a good thing.
A lot of folks already in the chat. Big shout out to all of y'all who are with us. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe. Think of that like button as it wanted to mess around and find out, and hit it right. Hit it a good solid one. Get that like button, smacked it hard, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We sent out some guests, some gifts tonight to 5 of the lucky channel members who are now members of the channel for a month. So I want to say congratulations to all the folks who won those, and we're happy to have you as part of the group in that. So you check out you've got some free emojis and things you can use, and there's some private videos that are up that you guys will have access to that aren't available publicly. And we're going to be adding to those here very soon. Noah and I have been working on some other stuff that will be also going in the members only section. Sorry, I was checking. But the algorithm is still showing that about 40% of our viewers are not subscribed to the channel. And folks, if you're enjoying the content, we would sure love it if you guys join the channel. If you guys subscribe to the channel, because it helps the algorithm and does help us continue to grow and reach out further. When I checked just before the show, I want to check again. We were very close to hitting 7,900, and we are 3 away. I don't know if you can read that. We're at 78.97. So we're 3 away from 7,900. So we've had a lot of growth in the last just few months.
Hit that subscribe button. It don't cost anything. Yeah. And, just to kind of put that in perspective, the more people subscribe, the more the algorithm pushes us out there, puts us in front of more people.
We show up in more searches and more search engines.
And, the more that we can put back into the show or get back into the show, the more we can put into the show, help things out to make the show better for y'all. Because that's what the show is for y'all. I mean, DA and I enjoy it, obviously. Noah enjoys it. Doc enjoys it. Steve enjoys it. But we do it because we enjoy doing it for y'all. To sit here and have these conversations.
And to hang out with y'all and share ideas, because Robbie and I, we always say that there are no experts in this field, and we will always say that because there really aren't. And we share our theories and our opinions, and y'all have shared a lot of theories and opinions with us. And you know what, we've learned quite a bit together. I mean, it's definitely a learning experience, and it's something that I hope that I always continue to learn in this field. I got a super chat from Audacious Amber. Says, thank you so much.
And a challenge.
And a challenge. A challenge has been issued.
She's laid down the gauntlet.
There we go. So, anything exciting happening in your neck of the woods here lately, Robbie?
Let's see. There was something Johnny and I were talking about that happened in North Carolina, but I can't remember exactly what it. I don't remember if it was something that happened a while ago, if it's something happened recent. But when we were driving back from LBL, we drove past it on the interstate, and he pointed out. He said, "That's one I was telling you about." And supposedly there was, I want to say it was a family with 2 young girls, maybe, and they were having smacks on the side of the house. You know, that whole thing that we've heard before.
Thank you, Karen.
But it was, thanks, Karen. But it got almost kind of violent, or up to the point where it was getting to that. I mean, it almost sounded like a Steve Lilly tale is when Johnny was describing it to me. So he's working on that. We're going to see if we can do a little bit more research and maybe either go up there or do a show on
definitely
it.
keep me informed. I want to hear more about that. But what I was alluding to is you reached a milestone on what's really out there.
Yeah, we sure did. We are at about 8 subscribers over 500 now.
Which is freaking awesome.
Yep.
Next stop 1,000, brother.
Yep. I honestly, and going back to when you and I first started talking about this, and I said never thought I'd get to have 500 people that were actually subscribed and listening to, at the time, me and Lance, but now me and Johnny talk about all this stuff. So it's been a wild ride, you know. Of course, you know, when I started that, I still wasn't officially a co-host of this channel. It was just kind of a part-time guest, I guess is the best way to put it. Yeah, Johnny does kind of sound like Tim Wilson. That's a very accurate description of Johnny. I never thought about that, but dadgummit, now that you pointed out 1980, I'm not going to be able to listen to him without calling him Tim Wilson now.
That's funny.
Johnny's a good guy.
We came pretty close to having to cancel the show tonight. Yesterday, my router took a dive and my internet crashed. Actually, it was night before last. During the night, we had a storm blow through. We had a massive clap of thunder right here by the house. Annette and the boys saw the lightning. I didn't, but it was like very close to the house, and internet just died. We didn't lose power. The lights didn't flicker, but the modem just died. So I guess it came in on the cable line. And since that was the 4th time we'd lost a modem with our old internet service provider, and it was going to take like 2 weeks for them to get us another one, I told my wife, I said, why don't we just change? And so, you know, we already had our phone plan through AT&T. So I went over and talked to AT&T, and they had a guy here today, you know, less than 24 hours later, and he set it up, and we got even better internet than we had before. So, you know, thank you, AT&T, for getting us back on track today, because we wouldn't have been here tonight if it hadn't been for that.
It's always something.
Yeah, well, you know, you deal with computers, you got to take the ups with the downs.
Yep. I mean, going back to the old crap top, I remember those days is when you didn't know from show to show whether the crap top was going to make it through or not.
Yeah. Fortunately, my tower's in pretty good shape now. There's a comment I wanted to. Yeah, the random ones were gifts from the channel. There's a thing on the channel, the main channel page on YouTube in the studio, that allows me to give away 5 at a time, up to, I think it's up to 15 a month, as gifts, and it just randomly selects them. So we've got 5 more we'll give away probably on Saturday. So, you know, I did this one early tonight before the show actually started, but I think next Friday, I'm on Saturday. I think I'll do it during the live. That way it'll happen in real time. So you've got to be actually
in the middle before.
You've got to be subscribed to the channel. That's true. You've got to be subscribed to the channel to be eligible.
So you're splitting it up. You know, you did this one before we really got started. The first time you did more towards the middle. So if you just wait a little bit longer on the next one on Saturday, that divvies it up or spreads it out, however you want to look at it. Nathan
Finn says you have to be able to accept them. There's there's down at the bottom of the screen, when you look at the bottom of the chat bubble, there should be a little like $ icon, and you click on that, and it'll give you gives you a bunch of options. Well, one of them is, will you accept donated memberships, or will you accept gifts on the channel? And just all you have to do is hit yes on that, and you should be right there in the thick of things with it. So tonight we're going to be talking about different types of Bigfoot from all over the world. We've talked about this in bits and pieces here and there, but we're going to hit a little more in depth tonight. And while we won't discuss a whole lot about any one particular type, we will be discussing locations and what they call them in other places, and we'll even go over some of the more interesting names that the Native Americans have for them. Because there's more than 100 different tribes all describe a similar creature, and they have their own names for them.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go over part of those tonight.
I mean, that right there in itself, to me, is one of the most compelling arguments to the fact that these creatures really exist. Is every First Nation tribe has a different name for roughly the same creature. Maybe some different characteristics and things like what you talked about we'll go over, but that's just a compelling argument to me. Not to mention throw in the rest of the world that has that. I mean, I don't see how much more compelling of an argument you need to make.
Yeah, the list is extensive. I mean, it would take me most of the show just to go through the entire list. But the Nahalem Tillamook tribe called them the Yidiate. The Salish refer them as the Sasahevas. The Nehalem Tillamook call them the Zelago. The Colvels call them the Skankicum. That kind of sounds bad, but that's what they call them. Scanicum. Scanicum.
I was about to say skunk ape, stinkum.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of.
The Wanachi tribe calls them the Choanito. The Yakima call them the Steyama. The Yakima, the Klickicat and the Puyallup call them Siatko. There's a Yakima tribe that refers to them as the Siatka. The coastal Salish call them Siatko. The Puyallup Nisqually call them Siatko, but it's spelled differently. Or the Steta'i. The Klallam call them the Siachka. There's so many names on here. Oma, Bukwas, Sonqua, Tataklea, Snea, the Rougarou. That's the Turtle Mountain Ojibwe call them Rougarou. The Qualinme, the Wendigo, the Wintiko, the Chihatanka. That's Lakota and the Dakota. The Mathlos, that's the Nootka tribe. The Nantinaq up in the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska. The Nantina, that's the Denaina. I believe that's from Alaska. Gitkun, the Kushtaka, the Ahu-Lakhook, the Gilyuk. God dang, this list is long. Yeah, there's the Cherokee, Nunyunui, the Inuit, Tornit, Sonqua, Wokwas, Gugu, Kokochi, Witiko, Atshin. Holy crap, this list is massive. It's bigger than I thought it was.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you just took 2 minutes there, give or take, and went through probably 20 different names. And
yeah. And that's not even scratching it. And in fact, I'm going to post the website that I found that list on in the chat so you guys can take a look for yourselves. These are all North American, Native American tribes. And the list is mind-boggling how long it is. that is different tribes that are all describing a similar creature, and the individual names that they have. And like Robbie says, it's just that alone is enough to really make you think there's got to be more to this
Well,
than just what we're being
well,
told. That's not even including the things that I've experienced and other people I've talked to. That's just based on that alone. That should make even the most rabid skeptic go, hey, maybe is more to
well,
this.
let's look at it from the okay, it's a hoax standpoint. So not only do you have to say, as of right now, for this to be a hoax, it would have to be a worldwide network of people that did absolutely nothing else on and I'm talking day and night, did absolutely nothing else other than perpetuate this hoax, going out in the woods and planting footprints in places that who knows where anybody, if anybody's actually going to walk up and see these, planting fake hair and all this stuff. They would have to do all that, set up all these fake pictures. Now that means they've had to either go back and fake these cave paintings, hack into Native American culture and history and do this, or is it just possible that all this stuff is there because this is a real creature?
I totally agree. Here's a great comment. I can pop that one up. Northwest Native Tracker says, I'll be adding hand drawn pictures of some of those people grandmother told of some of those tribes. I would love to see those. That would be fantastic.
Thank you, Northwest.
Appreciate it. Um, but just that alone. I mean, it is like Robbie was saying, it's just absolutely mind boggling. And the fact that some of these tracks are found in places where it is impossible to go out and hoax those tracks just on the off chance that someone might wander by. I mean, in the case of the tracks that the track and the partials that my wife and I found outside our cabin up in the mountains, up in the Smokies, that was on a side of the house that I don't know wouldn't normally go to. If somebody was going to hoax a track and freak us out, they would have done it down on level ground at the front or back of the house, at the about front of the back of the cabin. The sides of the cabin were at about a 45-degree angle, and I almost broke my dang leg trying to get down to the track to take pictures of it. It was not an easy climb down to get down there to take pictures. If you were going to hoax a track, that is like the hardest spot anywhere around that cabin to put a track. And if I hadn't have gone over to that side and moved a tree branch and looked down, because that's the side of the house we heard the strikes against, and my wife heard something growl at her through the window. Had I not went over and checked that side of the house, I never would have saw that track, because there weren't by either entrance of the house. There weren't any out by the main deck out front, and there weren't any out by where we parked the car. So if somebody was hoaxing that, they could have put it someplace they would have been much more certain I would have seen it. So whatever left that track was definitely a large creature. It was also heavy, and it went up through an area and disappeared into the woods where it would have been very difficult for me to go without a machete.
And Jessica brought up a good point. I was on her show Sunday night, and we were kind of sort of talking about the same thing about when we were all out in LBL, and Tyler made that warning after we saw the green eye shine. I just want it known that we're up here armed just in case it was somebody down there trying to prank us or whatever. But Jessica brought the point. She goes, how stupid and crazy do you have to be in today's day and time to try to go out in the woods where people are out there 9 times out of 10 armed and try to hoax somebody? You get shot that way. So, there's that too. If these people are doing that, they're taking their life in their own hands just to try to, on the off chance that somebody's going to see this stuff. I just don't buy into any of the logic that people put behind it. Oh, it's a hoax. It's obviously a hoax.
I can tell you, right off the bat, my wife heard something growl outside that window, and we had seen bears in the area. I was not unarmed when I checked that track. If somebody had been down there in a big gray gorilla suit trying to scare me, probably would have got shot.
Yeah.
I got a super chat from Dr. 45 120 Sharp. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate
Miss
it.
Lene had a question. Says, have there been stories of Bigfoot in Ireland? Well, that is a great question. And in fact, yes, there have. There have been quite a few. Only in Ireland, they refer to it as a wild man. But the description is very similar to the description we have here in the States. It usually found around boggy and marshy areas. And there's a lot of bogs in Ireland. But they, if you look at the sightings map, they're literally all over Ireland. There's no part of Ireland where there's really hasn't been anything. But yes, they call him the wild man, and they are seen in Ireland.
And that's another thing that we kind of talked about and hit on before, that a lot of these stories, like Beowulf, we feel like Beowulf and Grendel, that could be, because look at the description.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Grendel is pretty much described as a Bigfoot type creature. And, you think about a lot of these trolls that you hear described in, Celtic and European and Norse mythology, living under bridges and the things they do. A lot of them are described, and if you really look at it and listen to it, that's almost a Bigfoot type creature.
Yeah. Nathan Finn says, I guess if they drop real fast, then it's a hoax. Well, I would say they have to throw their hands in the air when they heard the slide rack, but I don't carry anything with an empty chamber, so they probably won't hear a slide rack. The only way they'll hear it is if it's locked back. Edie Testrum says, I'll have to check my notes, but I think I found another name for them in the northwest part. Cool. Robert D says, here's one for you. South American tribes come out of the jungles and talk about these types of being. Where did they get the idea from? No TV or paper reports there. He's got a point.
Yeah.
I mean, same thing like in Borneo, the wild man of Borneo. The tribes that are telling these stories, they don't have internet and television. These are remote, like still living the way they did 1,000 years ago tribes. So they're seeing something.
That is documented, like with the Michele and Mbembe. When they took the researchers took the books in there and said, was it this point this hippo? Like, no, it's not that.
They knew what a hippo was.
Yeah, point out. Then they, and why they had a book on dinosaurs, I don't know, or had a book with, maybe it was an encyclopedia, I don't know. But they point out a large sauropod like a brontosaurus or whatever, and they're like, that's it. These, like I said, these tribes don't have the Google where they can type in on the Googles and see what a brontosaurus looks like. They knew because they had seen it. I mean,
Miss Naomi says in South America, I believe it's called the Mono Grande. Yeah, there are dozens of names for these types of creatures, and more than we can list. I mean, just absolutely fantastic. Northwest Native Tracker says they can smell the powder and the bullets. That does not surprise me. I mean, I know we can train dogs to do that. In fact, down at Silver Dollar City at the main gate, they usually have a guy out there with a dog, and the dog will react if somebody's carrying a firearm.
You see Miss Naomi's comment?
Miss Naomi cracks me up.
Was he the one true prince and had a big bank account for you there, Miss Naomi? But, if you really think about it, sometimes it takes way more effort to believe the fantastical stuff these people that say it's a hoax is, other than just say, yeah, these are real. Or a lot more faith, that's what I should say. It takes a lot more faith to believe that it actually is a hoax versus believing it.
Right.
I mean,
because the evidence is overwhelming. I got a super chat from Dwayne Milton. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, man.
Some people are taking up Amber's challenge.
Gary Lowe says, has anything like a Gugway been found other than in North America? Well, some of them, especially some of the more remote regions of Australia where they describe the Yowie, They talk about it having much bigger teeth or a pronounced snout. So hard to say for sure. But yeah, especially like Beowulf is described as having bigger teeth and things like that. So I would say that the Gugway does probably, at least some variant thereof, exist in other places.
Well, didn't we talk
Thanks,
about
Steve.
one
That
time?
is awesome. I am glad. I am glad. I'm glad she's home and doing good, doing well, folks. Keep Steve and his family. You know, his wife just had surgery and she's home resting. So we're all praying for her to get better and have quick recovery. And for Steve as well. He's been dealing with a pretty nasty back injury. So you know, we'll all keep them in your prayers if you don't mind. We'd sure appreciate it. Lost my train of thought.
Oh, I was asking, didn't we have something one time or say something one time about we thought that those packs of devil monkeys that people see sometimes that might could be young Gugway?
You and me and Ryan Paul Tremblay were talking about that.
Okay,
About how devil monkeys could be young packs of young Gugway, and it kind of makes sense because they describe them as being very baboon-like.
well, I mean, mandrill, baboon, that's
Yeah,
well, you know, and the big thing, if you've got something in every major civilization on every continent that describes something similar, what is the most likely cause of that?
that they're all seeing something.
Wrong. It's that they're all a hoax. I
They're
mean,
all making it up.
yeah. I mean, that's literally what they want you to believe. Oh no, all these people are having the same. It's mass. What do they call it? Mass
Mass
hypnosis.
hysteria. Mass hysteria. And I don't buy that.
No, I don't either. But I think that's like we've talked about before. I think that's. I don't want to say it's all because of money they would lose. I'm sure that's a big part of it. You know, like we've talked about the $33 billion industry that the National Park Service brings in. I'm sure that's got part of it, or you know, a small part of it maybe. But I think a lot of it is just they don't want to admit that we're smart enough to figure this stuff out.
Right. And
By admitting that means we don't need them. They don't have to control.
they don't have to bottle
control.
feed us all the
Yeah,
answers.
exactly.
And you know, and also if these things are as intelligent as we think, and the government's been experimenting on them for years, the outcry is going to be huge.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. So I mean, you know, the idea that that our government is got all our best interests. We don't need to go there because we all know that, and
Oh
most
yeah,
people that are in here,
yeah.
you know, we've all jumped down that rabbit hole at time from many times. So it has to be something because what we say Occam's razor is always the easiest answer. And yes, Rodney, I've seen several in our area. Matter of fact, I'll get with you in the next day or two and give you a rundown on what I've seen. But I think it's got to be something as simple as the fact that, you know, obviously one is money, like we talked about you know, but I think a lot of it is the control, because if they admit now that these things exist,
And they've known about them for a long time.
all of us are right. And what does that? How does that make them look? I mean,
It also makes them liable for all the people that have gone disappearing.
right, and that was my next point. You know, it makes us right, and like people like David Pilates who've been coming right up to the edge of saying this, but not really saying it yet, but just right up to the edge of saying, there's probably cryptids that are responsible for a good bit of this. You got to have the blame.
And yes, they are in fact eating people.
Yeah. I mean, so as much outrage as you would have for the experiments they were doing on it, think about how much outrage you would have for, you knew these things were taking people out of the national parks and things like that.
They've been eating people for years and you never warned us.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it would collapse the infrastructure or come close to it.
Yeah. Not to mention the impact it would have on pretty much any industry that has anything to do with the woods. Logging industry. Then then they're going to deal with people in mineral industry like oil and other natural resources. And then anybody that's using timber for paper products. I mean, the list of products that we get from the forest is pretty freaking high. And all of that would come to a screeching halt until they figured things out.
So, I mean, this benevolence that they have for us is obviously, we know, is not, a lot of it I think comes down to money. And
I agree.
And the loss of the stuff, because like you said, $33 billion industry for the National Park Service. God knows how much money the government gets from the logging industry for those permits and oil pipelines and permits that they have to get and pay to the government. I mean, think about how much money you're talking about that could be taken away from them.
Do you remember when I told you about me and Noah here in Wood Knocks out by Fellows Lake? City Utilities owns Fellows Lake, and they recently opened a new area on the north side of Fellows Lake. Used to the only places you could get in and picnic or anything was on the south side, but there's now a section on the north side that's open. It's all new. Noah and I were out there just the other day, and check this out, what we found. I took a picture of this because I was really surprised that it was just kind of out there and like nothing happened. Notice a little fella right here.
Oh, he's just a friendly little helper.
Yeah.
Showing you what you need to do on the trail.
And that's just kind of out there. Like,
that would be what you would call soft disclosure.
Yep. I definitely think, we were mentioning earlier, I definitely think we've been seeing soft disclosures for a long time. But let's get into some of the types. We'll start, of course, here in the United States, and we'll kind of move off in other directions. Casey Calloway says, just stopping by to leave a like and say hello. Wiley's back in Springfield, and I can't put it down. Y'all have a great night. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying those. Thank you. There we go. Miss Neoma. Problem solved. Tell us Bigfoot exists and hire them to be forest rangers. Yeah. You litter the first time, you get a slap. Second litter, they tears your arm off. But I think the first type of Bigfoot we'll discuss, and we'll just like I said, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on any one type. It's probably the one that started it all for most of us, and that's the Patterson-Gimlin type. It's the infamous Patty. It looks like a primitive man. It's definitely got ape-like features, but it essentially looks like a primitive man. And that was what threw so many people for a shock, is because, for the first time in most people's lives, they were getting a glimpse of something that looked almost like us. And it clicked the uncanny valley box on a lot of folks, I can tell you. The Patty type is what you saw, wasn't it, Robbie?
Yep. That is 100% what I saw looking in the door at me. Matter of fact, I was showing a screenshot of MK's video where he had enhanced everything. I showing that to my dad today, and he said, "Well, how close is this?" I said, "That's exactly what I saw." And he got looking at it, and he said, "Wow, that's exactly how you described it too." And I said, "Yeah, that's exact. The conical head, no hair or fur or anything around the eyes and the nose, the big flat nose with the bigger nostrils, no hair or anything around the lips." So,
but yeah, this type are powerfully built. They look like a cross between a human and a gorilla, but they favor more of a human. Massive body with a conical shape to the head. The head seems to be too small for this big broad body. It's in gorillas, it's known as a sagittal crest. Height range reports for the Patterson type, 6 to 9 feet in most cases. Some reports a little higher than that. But for the most part, 6 to 9 feet seems to be about average for the Patterson Gimlin type. Then you get down here to the Midwest and the South, and you have a type that they refer to as the wood booger. And this is what I've got most of my experience with. The funny thing is while most people refer to them as a Bigfoot, they are the wood booger type. But the funny part is, they refer to it as the wild man or the Momo in Mark Twain National Forest, but it's still described almost exactly the same way. These are more ape-like than the Patterson Gimlin type. They far less human-looking, and generally not as big. Most average reports seem to be around 7 feet. They're also aggressive. The woodburger type tend to be a lot more aggressive. This is where you get a lot of your stories about them trying doorknobs, smacking the sides of houses, or even reaching into cars. They're known to attack and kill livestock. They're more animal-like and are more likely to bluff charge you or outright attacks. If you run across one like this, be careful, because these are the ones I believe do more damage than the Patterson Gimlin type. I think these things are far more aggressive towards people, and the closer you get to one or its family group, the more likely you are to be attacked. What do you think, Robbie?
Yeah, but now I agree that there's differences, but I think sometimes behaviors kind of cross over, because I've seen some of those behaviors in like the Patty Gimlin version, like the smacking of the house, the looking in. Obviously, mine was very curious, was looking in the window or the door at me. And
PD Testament says reaching through bathroom windows. Yeah, if you've watched Legend of Boggy Creek, we all know that.
Man, that thing reached through the window at me.
Miss Lene says it's the bottom of the hour. Well, let's take a quick moment to hear a word from one of our affiliates. And since we've got a video prepared by little Doc himself, how about we hear a word from Dark Angel Medical.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And folks, if you do go to darkangelmedical.com, make sure you use discount code Cryptid25 for 25% off your order. That is good through now and out of the end of April. But at the end of April, that code will be changing. So if you want to get your 25% discount, now is the time to do it. Because again, that code will be changing at the end of April. So check them out at darkangelmedical.com. And remember, they're HSA and FSA certified. So if you're a first responder, you can take advantage of that. Now, where was we?
We were just talking about, you had talked about the second.
Oh yeah, the wood boogers.
Wood boogers, because like kind of what I was saying, like I've told you before, my great grandmother used to tell me, "Don't go down the woods too far, and boogers will get you." So I think there's a lot of crossover between, and it may just be a dialect or a cultural thing or something like that. But I think there is some crossover you could have some crossover as far as a Patty Gimlin breeding with that version, and you get the things like that. It's like when you
and just if you look at people, I mean, you'll have behaviors run the gamut in just any group of people.
So that was my spiel about that one. Now, it is not that anything is different than what you said. It's just I think that some small behaviors kind of cross over at times.
I just think that certain behaviors are more common among certain types. But when you start talking about aggressive, one name tops the chart for me, and that's the Gugway. These bad boys are nothing but raw aggression. Much like how bear species change the farther north you get, I think that's what we're running into with the Gugway. These are meat eaters. They're not like bears that down here in the southern states or lower 48 that eat a big chunk of their diet based on roots and berries. These bad boys are meat eaters, much like the polar bear. So if you run into one of these things, it is not going to be a pleasant encounter. They have a nasty reputation. In fact, the name Gugway comes to us from, I believe it's the Anishinaabe tribe, or is it? If Ryan was here, but it's the original word was Cookway, which means face eater. You don't get a name like that because you hang around and exchange recipes or do trade. You get a name like face eater because you've been killing folks. So these things are bigger. They tend to have fewer toes. A lot of the stories talk about them having 3 toes, although there are some stories of Gugway having 5. But one thing you will notice that's different from standard Bigfoot is there are claws on the tracks. And if any of you are familiar with tracks, claws are pretty obvious. If you look at a bear track, you'll see the print, and then you'll see the impressions of the claws. Same thing with a dog track. If you know what you're looking for, you can see the impressions of the claws. These things have claws on their hands and feet, are highly aggressive, and some stories put them in 12 to 15 foot range. So this is definitely not one I want to run into on a lonely road with a flat tire on the car.
It was a dark and stormy night.
I think the Gugway and the Janoskwa types are primarily what they have up in Alaska. I think those are the ones that are so dangerous that Fred talks about them. I think those are the ones that are, again, primary meat eaters. They're not out there looking for roots and berries. They're looking for something that's got a lot of calories to it. There are stories of them things dragging grizzly bears out of their den while they're hibernating. There's stories of them, smashing in cabins, remote cabins, and killing everybody inside. So the ones up in Alaska are notoriously more aggressive, and I think that's because the Janoskwa and the Gugway both tend to be bigger anyway. I think that's where the Kushtaka legends come. 12, 15 feet tall, bloodthirsty, carrying people off. So I think that's where we're going to see a lot of the overlap on these behaviors of these creatures. One thing about the Gugway to remember is if you see what we refer to as eye shine or tapetum lucidum, a lot of Bigfoot eye shine is reported as sometimes green, sometimes like a yellow, but the Gugways are reported to be red. And I don't know if that's an indication of evil, as a lot of people would say, but I think it has to do. I think the color of the tapetum lucidum is really based on diet. Humans don't generally have tapetum lucidum unless you're looking at people like with a IR camera. Then you'll see reflecting the infrared. But generally, humans don't exhibit that kind of thing. So if you think you're seeing a guy in a monkey suit and he's got eye shine, it ain't a dude.
Nope. And seeing green eye shine at night will give you a whole new perspective on things.
Especially when it's less than 20 yards away.
25 feet.
Yeah, that one we saw that night in Joe Bald, it was close.
Yeah.
Now Now, since I went ahead and mentioned the Genosqua, we'll talk about it next. The Genosqua, also sometimes referred to as stone giants, were reported by a lot of tribes as covering themselves in tree sap and then rolling in river rocks to give themselves like a crude armor. And that worked pretty well against stone tip spears and arrows. But I think that practice may have died out somewhat since most powerful, like high caliber hunting rifles are not going to slow down for a few rocks. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that was we've had Ryan on the show a couple times, and that's his bread and butter as far as the Bigfoot world goes, is the Genosqua. And I could sit and listen to him talk about those things for hours. I mean, he's a wealth of information about them.
He absolutely is.
And
here's a good question. Brett says, do you think the Gugway is aggressive due to being territorial or limited food resources?
I think it's probably going to be a little bit of both. Because, well, I mean, depending on what particular area we're talking about. I mean, they might be in an area where there's not a territorial type thing, but I still think I think they're very territorial in nature anyway, just because of how aggressive they are. And typically, animals that are very aggressive, they are territorial. Alligators.
Any two big predators in the same area, they're going to clash.
Yep. So I mean, and it's always the two toughest kids on the block type mentality when you look at that. They're always going to fight, and they're always going to have to see who the toughest is.
Exactly. Steve Payton says, where are the Gugway typically being seen state-wise? They're generally seen in the states that border Canada, the colder states, although I have seen reports of very good, clear descriptions of Gugway in southern Missouri, Arkansas, and East Texas.
Yeah. I think was it Ryan?
Don Donaldson says could be the Gugway just have a taste for long pig. Could be. Now, what are you gonna say? Sorry, Robbie.
I was just gonna say, was it Ryan that was telling us the story about the tribe up there that the Genosqua almost wiped out until they traded with
French trappers and got guns.
Yeah.
And then they basically got everybody together with guns and went after these things.
And then reverse roles. So here's a question, because a lot of that stuff from that story sounds kind of the same type of behavior from the Light Horseman story that we talked about.
The Tubby brothers.
Yeah. Did we ever have anything that said what type that we thought that, or do we ever speculate on that? Or do we think that might have been Genosqua?
The descriptions never mention anything about a pronounced snout. So I think that was just a particularly nasty group of wood boogers, possibly even Genosqua. But they were obviously man-eaters. 3D Havoc says, hey, sorry I'm late, but did you all find out about the missing people in LBL? Once local law enforcement and park rangers took over, it pretty much got shut up. And we found nothing in the news about them. So your guess is as good as ours, man.
Yeah. I mean, they stopped us later that night, and it ended up being a lot further off than any of us thought anyway. So we never even made it to where it was at.
Next type I was going to mention is the relic hominid type. And relic hominid, while physically described as a lot like the Patterson Gimlin, they described as having a lot less hair on the face and the face looking far more human. And I think these might be direct descendants of Neanderthal. I think there's a good chance that most of the Bigfoot subspecies are in some way a pocket collection of Neanderthal or Denisovian or any one of a dozen other proto-humans that just went their own way. We would be genetically compatible. I mean, we know that a lot of humans, even today, still have traces of Neanderthal DNA in them. So if these things are as close to us as Neanderthal, then it's very likely that they could not only interbreed with humans, but interbreed with each other.
Well, that that would go back to that. What was the Russian?
Jana,
Yeah, that she was taken by that village and had several babies from guys in the village, and that'd take the babies away because she would take them down the river and try to
try to
clean them.
wash them in the freezing water.
Yeah.
Northwest Native Tracker says, I know where to collect a bone fragment of one of those people. I would love to go collect it. Dude, yeah, get a hold of me. If we can plan an expedition, I'll go get bone. Obviously missed a comment. Roxanne says, I think Gugwe are naturally mean and aggressive, born with it. I would agree. I think that's just their disposition. I think that they are very aggressive because any animal that exists in a harsh climate is going to be very territorial and very aggressive when it comes to food. They're not going to put up with another predator in their area. So either they're seeing us as a prey item, which is likely, or as another predator, which is just as likely, or it could be a combination of the two. It sees us as another predator, and by taking us out, it also finds a food source. I think they're discovering that we're not as formidable as we once were, especially since most people don't travel armed. Nathan Finn says, I think the Barmanu was considered a relic hominid. The Barmanu is another one we're going to get to here shortly. But yeah, I think very much those things are very close to the relic hominids. Then there's a type of Bigfoot they refer to as a Wendigo, and it's not like a Wendigo that you would think from the Algonquin legends of it being the gaunt, the curse of the Wendigo. But there's a type of Bigfoot they refer to as a Wendigo as well, and it, much like the Genosqua, is a confirmed meat eater. It's aggressive, and I think personally, that the Genosqua and the Wendigo, quote unquote, Bigfoot, are probably the same thing, if not very similar. It's probably just a different tribe that had a different name for these hyper aggressive Bigfoot that like to carry off tribesmen or even settlers, whoever was in the area. If it could get a hold of somebody, it would carry them off and eat them. So I think those two may be very similar, if not the same creature. What do you think, Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and it's like we talked about with the Tennessee Wild Man, when you get just that general description, Tennessee Wild Man, but when you really start diving into it and you hear or read things like, oh, well, this could be a Gugwe, or this could be a Genosqua, or this could be an Ohio Grassman. I think, sometimes people will hear a general description and then they'll kind of add with what they've heard. And then sometimes you might get a description of one that might not even be in that area, but it just goes with what people have heard, and they just kind of build on it. But I think a lot of these creatures are share a lot of similarities, but there are obviously certain physical traits when you look at a Gugwe, and characteristical traits that go with how they behave and things like that. But for the most part, I think a lot of them are, like a tiger's a tiger. No matter if it's a Bengal or a Siberian or whatever, it's still a tiger. But there are differences. There are genetic differences. There are visual differences. There's behavioral differences. A snake is a snake, but how many different species of snake are there? It's just
exactly
when you really start breaking things down like that, I think the differences get kind of minute. But from our standpoint, just looking at it from the outside looking in, if you're standing there looking at a Genosqua on one side and a Gugwe on the other, they look like two totally different things. But I think once you really start breaking down that other than those visual differences, there might not be a whole lot other than visual and behavioral. But there again, that's just an opinion because we don't really know.
Right, exactly.
If that made any sense, I don't know. I felt like I kind of rambled there for a second, but I knew where I wanted to go. I just didn't know how to get there.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. And as much as we get sidetracked, it's amazing. We're still on course.
Yeah, 56 minutes and we're still on course.
Holy crap! That's got to be some kind of record.
Must be some kind of a record.
The next one I want to talk about. I don't know if they're really the same, but I think the only thing that really differentiates them is behavior. I think that Momo the monster, which is seen in the northern parts of Missouri and parts of southern Illinois, and the Ohio grassman are probably very similar. Uh, Behavior wise, the grassman makes these big intricate nests woven into the thick grass, but we don't have that grass here in Missouri.
Yep.
So I think they're very similar types. They're Midwestern types of Bigfoot. They also aren't reported as being nearly as aggressive as the one where they refer to as the wood booger. However, if provoked, they're still quite dangerous, and they have been known to scare the crap out of people on not
But
so rare occasions.
That's really not as, because you can deal with a mountain lion in one area of the country and it not be as aggressive as mountain lions in another part of the country. So
Same with bears.
yeah, and like you said, if you're in an area with a grizzly bear they just got a lot of food, you probably don't have, unless you're getting in between a sow and its cubs, you probably don't have a whole lot to worry about. But
Right.
you encounter a grizzly in an area or a time of the year when food's scarce, same bear might act 180 degrees different. So, maybe a lot of these differences are, or maybe down to climate, individual, because individuals can have different personalities. Because that as well as every Bucky and Cap have two different personalities.
Mm-hmm.
There's still two dogs, but they have very different personalities. So, but to your point about Momo and the Grassman, the Grassman is called the Ohio Grassman because he makes those grass nests, but that grass only grows in that one particular area.
Right.
So who's to say? Because we've talked about how big of a range these things may have. Because this goes back to our theory about if they live in caves and they come out, and that particular one happens to come out in the area around Ohio, and he makes that nest there because that's the only spot that grass grows in. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a wood booger or Momo or
they
or
use
anything
what
like
they have in their environment to their advantage.
And I think that goes back to that Tennessee Wildman example I used, where if you start looking at all these encounters that they talk about and read the descriptions, all the descriptions are, some of them are way different from each other, but some of them are just a little bit different. And you're like, well, that sounds like this, but that sounds like that. But they all fall into that Tennessee Wildman. So,
well, Miss Lene mentioned mountain monsters in the Yahoo, and I think that's just a regional name for one. I think it's probably just another subspecies of Bigfoot, and that's just what they locally refer to it. But much like Robbie was saying with the Ohio Grassman or the Momo the Monster, it's just where they happen to be, and that's the name the locals stuck to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Greg's first documentary, the Downy Booger. I mean, that was because that was the area it was at.
Mm-hmm.
But does that necessarily mean that was a wood booger, or those people just call all those things like that boogers, and it was called the Downy Booger because that's where it was at? I mean, Who knows? That could have been a Genosqua, that could have been a Gugway, that could have been a Patty Gimlin. But like you said, where it is, it's a local thing. This is what people call it. It doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it wrong. It just means that's what those people were given to take or given to call it.
I think that the Moss Mountain Massacre, which happened in the early 1800s down in Arkansas, I think that was most likely a very aggressive clan of wood boogers or possibly even Gugway. I mean, these things were killing people. So definitely an aggressive group that they encountered, and well, very much so. They were aggressive and and tearing people limb from limb and ripping people in half. So they definitely encountered something very aggressive. But as to what type, the physical descriptions really aren't clear enough to say. What is it? Was it a Woodburger? Was it a Janoska? We can only kind of speculate on that, but it was definitely something very aggressive. We're at the top of the hour. Robbie, you want to tell us a little bit about Scallywag? Just a quick and dirty presentation. Nothing huge. Robbie, you lost your volume. Robbie, be right back, folks. We're at the segment of the show where Robbie loses volume again. As much as I hate for that to happen, it does seem to happen with relative frequency. He should be right back. He's got to reboot his browser for some reason. His his audio codec just chunks out right in the middle of the show. There he is. All right. Let me see. Can we hear you? Oh, you froze up. Well, we may have lost Rob. I will hear you now, but you're still frozen. Oh, you're moving now.
The watch ain't got nothing to do with that. It's just freaking computer. Anyway, Scallywag Tactical is another one of our affiliates, veteran-owned company. Make some of the best blades that you can have or buy or get your hands on. This is the Gunner's Mate. DA showing you, was it the Mini Jack?
Mini Jack.
With a little something extra on it. Get my new claw over here. Yep. Great minds think alike. Some of the, like I said, if you like blades and you like knives and you like well or quality made items, check out Scallywag Tactical. Right now they're doing an extra 10% off for our members. If you go and hit code DA Roberts 10 at checkout instead.
Oh, we lost Robbie again. Robbie, you froze up, dude. I don't know if it kicked you out or it's showing you. Okay, I think we got you back.
You got me?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, they're giving an extra 10% off our normal 10% discount that they give us. When you go to the checkout, hit code DA Roberts 10, and you get your normal 10% off plus an extra 10% to the end of this month, DA.
End of this month, yes.
So go check out some, and that also stacks up with the sales on the blemish blades. They're trying to make room
for new inventory. So if you've been holding off getting a kitchen set or a personal hunting knife or something, now is a great time to do it because you get that extra 10% off.
Yep. So you can really get some good deals when you, especially if you look on the blemish blades and get one of the sales and then get 20% off of what they've already took off of it for the sale. You can get some pretty good deals. Like the boarding axe, they've got on there for $175, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already $175 blade that's normally $300, and then you get extra 20% off that. So you do the math, you can get some pretty good deals on that stuff. So that's all I got to say about that.
All righty then. I'll get the chat back up real quick. Miss Lene says it's the evil satellite. Could be.
It is possible.
So I think games like the Yahoo or creatures along those lines that you see them talking about, and even the Blue Man was reported here in Missouri. The Bigfoot that they saw down around Douglas County, they referred to as the Blue Man, and it's because there's several possible reasons why they refer to it as the Blue Man, even though its fur was described as being black. I like to think the one was because the first guy that saw it, his last name was Blue. Another one was supposedly he was seen around an area called Blue Creek. And then the third reason was that its hair was so black that it looked almost blue in certain lights. But there's a lot of reasons why they would possibly call it the Blue Man. But when the description ends, it sounds very much like the Momo or any other type of Bigfoot. So I think we're going to see a lot of regional names that are describing the same creature, much like the Native
Yeah.
Americans have different words.
And like I said, there could be, variations in behavior, and that could be diet, that could be territory, that could be competition for all kind. I mean, because if you look at something like hippos, if there are an abundant amount of females, fights aren't as prevalent among the bull hippos as they are if there's not as many females to mate. If there's not as many females there to mate, fights are going to be a lot more brutal and a lot happen a lot more, just because they're going to be fighting for that resource. So, little things like that make a big difference in how animals act and behave.
Very true. And again, just like we were saying, I think we're going to see a lot of the same creature being described the very similar ways with different regional names, much like Native American tribes have the same creature, but they all have their own names for it. Sorry. Roxanne Delgado says, found out the other talking to my mom when I mentioned tree apes. She asked, the stories? I said, yes. Asked her if she'd seen them. She says, I got a will not talk about it. Hope she shares soon. That would be awesome. Love to hear about that.
Yeah, the I will not talk about it is usually a key to, yeah, I've seen or I know or.
And that kind of brings us out of North American ones. Of course, we've got all the Native American names for different types of Bigfoot, and we mentioned the Irish wild man, but in Scotland, they have one they call the Gray Man. Now I'd probably need Noah to pop in and actually pronounce it, but the Gaelic name is Amphirlaith Mór, which translates as the Big Gray Man. It haunts Ben McDoo, the highest peak in the Cairngorms, and it's been cited for hundreds of years. Especially in the mist on those mountains, people have reported being followed in the mist, and we're not just talking locals who had a few too many and wandered up into the mountains and claimed something followed them. Like British royalty has reported it. Some professional hikers and mountain climbers have reported being followed while they were on that mountain. So this is something that they take pretty damn seriously. And also in the woods surrounding the Cairngorms, there are reports of of local law enforcement finding abandoned vehicles and no idea what happened to the people, or abandoned campsites. Because in Scotland, they don't have the laws about trespassing that we have here in the States. If it's public land, then it's for use. Pretty much anyone can use it. And as long as you're not damaging private property, you're allowed to basically walk around and check out like rivers and lakes and stuff. So they can get into places that we would be frowned on. And again, some of the sightings come from people with noble titles. A couple of knighthoods have seen them. So the Gray Man of the Cairngorms is something that it's tough to dismiss as just people in Scotland are superstitious.
I don't know much about that Scotland one in Scotland other than what you said, but a lot of it sounds really familiar, really that same flavor and feel of all the others. So that just goes to what we said, or strengthen what we talked about earlier, that there's probably something to all that. You know, unless everybody.
Sorry, go ahead, Robbie.
I was going to say, unless everybody in the world got around or sat around the table and said, you know what? I think we need to create a worldwide hoax, and this is what we need to do.
Now, all over Europe, there are all kinds of stories of wild men and what they called the wood woes. Or if you look at Beowulf, Grendel is described very much like a Bigfoot. So all over Europe, there's rich history of these of wild man type creatures. All over Britain, there's stories of the wood woes attacking even armored knights from the Middle Ages reported doing battle with the wood woes. Europe is no stranger to Bigfoot sightings either. In fact, there's a specific type of wild man that is said to haunt the Black Forests of Germany, and hikers are told routinely to be careful because people go missing quite frequently in the Black Forest.
Well, I mean, Britain really is no stranger to any of the kind of cryptids. I mean, we've had Leon on here plenty of times, and he's, I mean, he's seen some stuff. Yeah, he's seen some stuff that'll scare the living daylights out of you. And all he can do is go after it with a knife, and he does. And he's a brave man. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, braver man than I am, Gunga Din.
Yeah. But, and just, if nothing else, just look at how many, that Beast of Exmoor, the big black cat that they've, that's been reported to live out on the moors. I mean, that's something that's, I can remember hearing about that when I was a kid. I mean, so even if it's something as simple as that that they've got stuff wandering around out there that shouldn't be there. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. But the Europe and the United States, those alone aren't. If that's not enough to make you think these things are more rampant, they even have them in the Middle East. There's a couple of different types that are reported in the Middle East. There's more of a lowland one that's seen a lot in Saudi Arabia and the deserts around it. They call it the Dev. It ranges from Turkey through Saudi Arabia, in Iraq and Iran, both. Syria has reports of the Dev. The Dev seems to be short for devil or jinn, D-J-I-N-N, where the word genie comes from. But the physical descriptions are more like a Bigfoot, usually ranging around 7 feet tall. And when seen at night, they claim that they have glowing eyes. Now, that could be from whatever their diet is, or gathering and reflecting moonlight or starlight. But there's surprisingly a lot of light in the desert at night. It's mostly ambient starlight or moonlight, but light carries quite a ways in the desert. It's kind of deceptive. The other type is more mountainous, and these are seen all over the mountains or mountains of Afghanistan and surrounding areas. Nathan Finn in the chat knows about this one. Him and I talked about it a couple of times. It's the Barmanu, and he mentioned it earlier in the chat. These have been seen in almost every province of Afghanistan and throughout the mountains of that area, Pakistan, even over into India, in the arid mountainous areas. The Barmanu seems to be the big one that's seen, and it's kind of like the relic hominid that we spoke of earlier. It's very Bigfoot-like, but the face looks very human. Colors in these things range from dark blacks to browns to desert tans and even red. And I think the bigger ones, the red colored ones, are probably where the giants of Kandahar stories come from. These things are pretty nasty, and the locals fear them. In fact, entire villages have up and moved because of these things.
But yeah,
Ed Peak, you got to go. Happy anniversary, man! 13 years. Congratulations, man.
Yep, and 3D had to step out too. So, good night, 3D. Have it.
Thank you, Brett. Good night, 3D. Brett, thank you. He says he's got to go as well. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the super chat. You have a great night.
Thanks, Brett.
Oops, I thought I closed that out. Anyway, Barmanu are particularly aggressive. Like I said, entire villages have packed up and said, deuces, we're out. and packed up shop and grabbed everything, including camel spiders and dogs, and bugged out of the area because these things are very territorial and very aggressive. And it would not surprise me if this is where the Giants of Kandahar story came, because if a special forces unit ran into one of these things, there's going to be a fight. They're not going to back down. They're, again, territorial and aggressive, and that's why I featured them as the creature in that story that Cam narrated, called Dog Soldiers, about when Will Gray Eagle was still in the Army Rangers.
We're Will and Doc.
1980 says, "DA, did you mention the skunk ape? We didn't." And that's one of the more, one of the ones, again, I think it's just like a regional description, because the physical description of the skunk ape is very much like what they call the wood booger. I think the skunk ape is just another regional variant, and maybe a little smaller because food is so abundant in the swamps, it doesn't have to grow as big to compete for food. But and I think may very well have been at least two different types of Bigfoot that were seen down at Falk, Arkansas. Some of the tracks found were three-toed, which leads me to think possibly Gugway, because they're very aggressive. But then others very much sound like a skunk ape. So I think Falk, Arkansas, because it's a nexus point of waterways, I think it's got an interesting degree of cryptid activity. Robbie, what do you think? You've been down there.
Yeah, that whole area down there has got. I mean, you just Will Lunsford took us around down there, and not a creepy vibe like Joe Bald or LBL, but just when you're out there, we went out on the Sulphur River bottom, and it's just like being in. It's almost like stepping back in time where we were at. I mean, you didn't feel like you were in modern times, and I don't mean it felt like it felt like you were in nature where something like that could survive for as long as
very primordial feeling.
Yeah, it was just, there was no light pollution, no sound pollution, clear skies, trees, river. I mean, it was beautiful, but you just got the feeling that you were in something else's home. But
kind of the way swamps do, swamps generally have that kind of mysterious feeling. I've been in swamps down in Louisiana and Arkansas and parts of East Texas, and the swamp always has that kind of lost world feel to it.
Yeah, that's a good description. Like I said, it's like you step back in time. Like it's just.
Nathan Finn said, so there was an international backed study of Barmanu, and the U.S. Green Berets claimed to have exterminated them in 2004. They may have wiped out a clan or two, but I doubt they exterminated them. If these things are using caves, there's no way they went to the bottom of every single cave in Afghanistan and rooted every one of these things out. They may have claimed they hunted these things to the point they don't come out in the daylight no more, but I guarantee there's still some out there. I don't think our military's ever been good at wiping out a species. We're very good at a lot of things, but I think hunting them to extinction is probably outside our wheelhouse, because there's so many places things like that could hide. Well, hell, just the other day in the news, a believed extinct species was found in Australia. A species of giant kangaroo that was thought extinct for hundreds of years was recently found in Australia, alive and well. So, I think our ability to wipe out a species is greatly exaggerated. We may be able to do a hell of a lot of damage, but, like to quote Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park, nature has a way.
Always finds a way.
Always finds a way.
There you are.
Arkansas Hog Hunter says, what species do y'all think the Cherokee Devil is? Cherokee Devil is, again, probably a wood booger, probably just a nasty one.
Yeah. And that here we go, that show again. I mean, they've taken a lot of these, you know, they had,
And folks, don't take that show serious,
yeah,
please.
that show
That
is
show is
nothing
entertainment
but
only.
entertainment. But they had the Cherokee Devil. They actually talked about Spearfinger. They talked about I think what they were talking about was the Genosqua, because they called it the stone-ish giant instead of the stone giant. So I think, who was it that we asked about smoke wolves? They talked about that on there, and somebody said that that was actually something that they had heard of but not used in a way that. So I think the Cherokee Devil, like DA said, is probably just another
regional name.
And honestly, wood booger is probably itself, or booger in itself is probably, a southern term for something, for most all of these things. So sometimes you can get lost in the names. Oh, this one's got this name and this one's got this name, but if these things have as big a range as we think they do, the chances are a lot of these people that see these things and they have these different names for them are probably seeing the same creature that 3 or 4 counties over, or another state over is seen. And it's just, okay, if they've got food item A in Kentucky that they eat, and they got food item B in Tennessee that they eat, and they have to act this way in Kentucky to get their food, they have to act this way in Tennessee to get their food, and the locals see it and they're going to give it different names, but it's probably the same species or subspecies. So I mean, there again, nobody knows this for sure. This is just speculation, but that's my personal opinion. I think a lot of these, when you start looking at descriptions of them and all the descriptions kind of start adding up or matching up, I think that's probably what it is. Is just, they're seeing the same creatures and they're just giving it different local names for it. And in the words of E.A. Malcolm, there it is.
Exactly. We talk about those in the desert there, the Barmanu, the Dev. Then we've got them scattered all over Asia. There are multiple names for Bigfoot-type creatures in Asia. Of course, we're all familiar with the Yeti, which is seen throughout the Himalayan region. Then you've got the Yeren, which is, again, very much like the primitive human. The what was that? What was it? What do we call it?
The wasn't Denisovan, was it?
Yeah, maybe Denisovan. But like a Neanderthal or a Denisovan, relic hominid. The Yeren is very much more described as more of a relic hominid than the Yeti.
That's China, right?
Right. Those sightings in China date back centuries, and even come up through the current day. I mean, they're still spotting them.
I mean, just look at one of the funniest movies and greatest movies ever made, Big Trouble in Little China. That's what that was. That big red thing that grabbed what's her name, Kim Cattrall. That's what that was based on. Chinese wild man, or Yeren.
And they are reported as carrying off people and livestock all over China. Of course, the Yeti is more ape-like it's more ape-like than even the Patterson-Gimlin. The prints of the pictures we've seen of prints that they found in the snow, and even the one that Josh Gates found in the mud, is definitely more ape-like than it is human-like. The toe is generally off to the side, but it's still walking bipedal. The toe is very divergent. They're also reported to be dangerous.
Minor correction on that. Adam actually found that track. Josh took credit for it. Well,
why am I shocked?
He eventually in the show but Adam is the one who actually. No, Adam told me a story personally about this, and Adam was the one that actually found that track, and then of course they had filmed Josh finding it after Adam had already found it. So,
It doesn't shock me.
no.
Then in other parts of Asia, they're known as the Alma or the Almasti. And these are the ones that they find through Mongolia, through the various mountain ranges of Russia. In fact, the ones that are seen in the area where the missing hikers in Dyatlov Pass are known as the Alma or the Almasti. Sometimes referred to as a Yeti as well, but it still acts very much like the Yeti. They're very dangerous. They're very aggressive. The
So
local
the
Mansi
war-
tribesmen referred to it as the mink, Menk, but more bestial, less human, very, very prone to violence.
Especially when they got dwarves riding them.
Yeah, especially when they got that. And the Alma was what that native was supposed to be Zana. Someone mentioned the documentary, and I saw that documentary where they proposed that she might have been from a tribe in South America, in Africa, I mean. But to me, that just doesn't make sense because she was described as being very hairy, and that's not common in Africa, seeing people covered with hair. And it was an extremely cold weather climate. So, African tribesmen are not used to surviving in a harsh, cold environment. This is, an area that's like Siberian like winters. So I don't think, to me personally, I don't think that theory holds a lot of water. I don't care what they claim they found in genetics. Results can be with genetic testing, because results can be reported as anything they want.
Yeah.
And the pictures of her descendants didn't look like you see pictures all the time of in a biracial couple. Those guys didn't look like from a biracial couple. Some of them had like Cro-Magnon man like thick brow. And were reported to be immensely strong. That's not typical. It sounds to me more like bred with a Neanderthal or a Denisovian than another subsect of human. So I don't know how much stock I put in that documentary, because again, they could report anything they wanted. We didn't see the DNA results. We just taken them at their word that that's what it was.
Well, I mean, case in point, look at how they reported the Dyatlov Pass thing with the researchers and all that stuff, and now this other guy comes in and says, no, they screwed all that up.
Yeah, that was not an avalanche.
Yeah, an avalanche killed them, caused them to bite their tongues off
and tear their own eyes out.
Yeah,
crush their chest. Yeah, so I think these are. I think it's a far more logical belief that they were killed by, a mink, as the Mansi call them, or the Alma, the Almasti. I think it's far more likely they were killed by that than by, because there was no sign of an avalanche, and they were on a very low incline, so that would have been the slowest moving avalanche in history. But if you guys haven't seen that episode, we did do an entire episode on the Dyatlov Pass, just fairly recently, so you definitely should check that one out. We talk about that. We talked about that at quite a bit of length. Another type, another continent entirely, not even connected by land to another continent like Europe and Asia or Africa. How there are land bridges where they could walk. These things could have migrated. Australia, on the other hand, doesn't have that connection. It is off by itself, yet it still has reports of these large hairy hominids. They refer to it as the Yowie. And the physical description of the Yowie varies from region of Australia. You've got some that are very desert-like. You've got some that are in some of the areas, some of the thickly forested areas. So their physical descriptions vary. And I don't know if it's fair to really call them all Yowies. I think very much like how we've got subsets here in the U.S. with different names. I think the Yowie is probably the same way. And stories of the Yowie were being passed around by the Aborigines of the Australian outback before any white settlers even got there. So the sightings on these things go back centuries.
Just when they said bottom of the hour.
Bottom of the hour. Okay. We'll our third and final for the night of the our affiliate program is brockblades.com. And here's one of Ken's knives. Both of these are skein dews. You'll notice they're both very different. It's because Ken hand makes all of his blades. No two are identical. The handles will be different. The blade shapes will be different because they're all done by hand. A great example, Robbie. Grab your dew claw.
You claw.
Let me flip mine around. Okay. Robbie put his the same way. These blades are identical. The Scallywag blades are amazing, but they are mass produced. This is a fantastic knife. It's one of the best knives in my collection. It's very versatile, but it's mass produced. Brock's blades are not. No two will ever be identical. They're handmade in the let's put those side by side like that. These are both skein dews, and they're very different. But no two of his blades will be ever identical. You can order a custom blade, or you can order one of the ones he already has available on his website. We're proud to support all first responders and our veteran-owned businesses, and Ken's a career first responder. So check out brockblades.com. Don't forget to use discount code Cryptid10 for 10% off your order. And if you order a custom blade, in the description, make sure you mention that you heard about brockblades.com here on DA Ex Machina, and he'll make sure that even with the customs, you'll still get your 10% off.
He's a good little feller.
He is a good dude. Now, the next type that I want to talk about comes from not far from Australia. It comes from that similar area. It comes from Indonesia and Sumatra, and it's one Robbie knows quite a bit about: the orang pendek.
Yep, the little man of the forest. This one is an oddity as far as Bigfoot type creatures are concerned, because most of the time this is between 4.5 to 6 feet tall. Give or take. I think maybe on the outset there, on the very, very, very slight chance, or slight encounters, some of them maybe have said 7 foot tall, but nothing above that. Most of them are like 4.5 to 6 feet tall. Look a lot like an orangutan, color wise rather. Like I said, his name translates into little man of the forest, roughly. That's another one. Adam Davies, a friend of mine, Greg's, has been on expeditions looking for that. Josh Gates has had a couple expeditions for it. I think Ian Redmond, he's another very prolific researcher in the
physical descriptions of the orang pendek don't just differ by them being slightly smaller. They're also described as having much longer hair on their head than on the rest of their body, which kind of gives credence to the wild man theory. They've been reported as gray, black, yellow, and even tan. And
I think some of the other comparisons drawn with orangutan is a lot of them say they have really long arms, like an orangutan. I think there's been a lot of arboreal, which means tree dwelling type stuff that they've been seen up in the trees a lot. No, Miss Moon, I've never been out of the country.
Or Sumatra.
I've never been there, so no, I've never seen one. I'm that guy and that nerd that just watched every single documentary that I could possibly watch on anything like this. But no, I've never seen one.
The orang pendek had been talked about by the locals in the jungles. Again, much like we were saying earlier, people with no outside world contact. They were describing this creature, and the idea was pretty much just like, whatever. It's native superstition. But the first report from a Westerner came from a Dutch settler in 1923. He almost shot it, but said it looked too human, and he couldn't pull the trigger.
And what was I about to say? I just lost it.
Sorry.
No, wasn't you. It literally just went out of my head.
I hate it when I do that.
I know. Oh, that's what I was going to say. The native, they just dismiss it as native folklore or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What does that sound an awful lot like? A recent discovery.
Americans.
No, the billy ape. Remember? We've talked about this.
Yeah, the billy ape.
Oh, there's not a 6-foot chimp, upright chimp that kills lions and steals people from villages and to what National Geographic actually
Found it in 1999.
Yeah, in 1999, not 1899, 1999.
And now we know the billy ape exists, and they're very dangerous.
And the billy ape acts a whole lot like a Bigfoot type species, in my estimation.
Spends most of its time moving around bipedally. It's
it
very aggressive.
Uses
tool
tools.
user.
And will kill lions.
Yeah, the local tribesmen call them lion killers. So that's got to be a pretty nasty, large chimp.
Much like Bigfoots have been reported to kill bears.
Lions
Lions
or
and
mountain
tigers
lions.
and bears.
Or hogs.
Mm-hmm. So, I know we're making jokes and kind of kidding around and cutting up. But the point is, just because these people who sit behind the keyboards and claim that they're scientists and claim that they know everything and says, I can't do the good funny voice like DA. Oh no, that could never happen. Pandas could never happen. There is no giant black and white bears in China.
Same thing with mountain gorillas.
Yeah, there is no giant gorilla or giant ape species in the mountains of Africa. There's
no, that couldn't possibly exist.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a 6-foot upright chimp that kills lions and steals people out of villages and is very aggressive and blah blah blah. Don't put too much stock into what these smart scientist guys especially from the Smithsonian, say couldn't possibly exist.
Right.
Because they probably do exist. And they just don't want us to know it.
And not too far from that area takes us to Cambodia, modern-day Cambodia and Vietnam, the rock apes. While reported being smaller than humans, they're extremely aggressive. And during the Vietnam War, there was numerous stories of soldiers getting into gunfights with these things. Described as like a primitive human, slightly smaller in stature, which kind of goes with that area. I mean, it's a jungle. It wouldn't have to get particularly big to be able to find food, kind of like the skunk apes. So, they wouldn't necessarily have to be, 10, 11 footers. They were described as 5 to 6 feet tall and very aggressive and rock throwing and worked in packs.
And when you think about Vietnam and some of there was the rock apes. There was the people reported the soldiers getting attacked by dinosaurs, lizard men.
A lot of weird stories coming out of that area.
So, there's some areas of this world that, things just normal people just wouldn't believe what could possibly be out there.
And folks, we've only touched on some of these. There are a lot more. There's in parts of South Africa, they call it the water bobajan. We already covered that. Cajun legends call it la bête noire. Southwest Alaska, the Urayuli. Siberia, there's a type called the Juna. In Argentina, the Uku. In Nicaragua, the Sisimique. In Nepal, The Pangbosh hand was supposedly a Yeti's hand. Then Yalmu is another name for them from Tibet. In Vietnam, you've got the rock apes, or what they call the I cannot pronounce this, the Ngori Rurung. In New Zealand, the Nagawa Wakata Cafe. Guyana, the Mono Grande. The Monkey Man of New Delhi. In another name in one of the other islands in New Zealand is the Mohau. Malaysia, the Mawas. The Mapinguari in Brazil and Bolivia. The Monde Barung in India and Bangladesh. Of course, there's the Kushtaka. The Kayati in Papua New Guinea. The Jinsung in central parts of China. Hibagon in Japan. The Hantu Jarang in Malaysia. The Basanwan in Spain. The Batutut in the Mentawai Islands. It just keeps going. The Agogwe in Portuguese East Africa. Oof. Amagongo in the Philippines.
And like I said, all this just in there's different variations in the description and the behaviors and things like that. But when you really break it down, they're all some
sort of
like
primitive
creature.
man.
Yeah, or primitive man, however whatever you want to call it. But it's an ape-like creature. It's a semblance of what we would describe as Bigfoot or Sasquatch or what all these all these cultures didn't get together and just decide one day that they're gonna prank the future generations by making up all this stuff.
Yeah, in every part of the world, with the exception of Antarctica, these things are reported. And I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't in Antarctica. We're not allowed to go there. It's very tightly closed off. When we did the show on the Piri Rice map, I mean, still got the map over here behind me in the corner. If you look in the edges of the map, you see Bigfoot-like creatures and dogman-like creatures, and that was a map of Antarctica without ice. So we're not allowed to explore Antarctica.
We don't know what's under that ice.
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know what's there. So there very well could be a Bigfoot type or Yeti type creature somewhere in Antarctica. We just don't know. But it makes sense to me that there would be, because they're everywhere else.
If one like a Yeti can survive in the Himalayas, I don't see why one couldn't survive in Antarctica.
Right. No, they can. They've survived north of the Arctic Circle.
Yeah. So I mean,
and there are things down there they could eat: penguins, seals, fish.
And let's think, who controls the amount of information coming in and out of Antarctica?
The government.
Exactly. So
private expeditions are not allowed down there.
Yeah. So we wouldn't know if anything was ever. I mean, all we know is penguins, seals, and polar bears. I'm sure there's more than penguins, seals, and polar bears in Antarctica.
I'm going to post a link in the chat for y'all. This is a really good resource. It's actually from Google. It's a map that shows some of the ones we've talked about, not all of them, but it shows all over the world what these things are called. So that one's definitely worth checking out, and you can see for yourself just how widely scattered across the planet these things are. Robbie's absolutely right. The world did not get together before the invention of the internet and decide to cook up this worldwide hoax to fool future generations. There is a reason why creatures similar to Bigfoot are seen literally everywhere in the world. Every culture has their own sightings of creatures like that. Little
Yeah,
Patty says, didn't hear the discussion of the abominable snowman. When we talked about the Yeti, yeah, more or less. It's the abominable snowman, I believe, is pretty much the same thing as the Yeti. And I think it's just another term for the Yeti because that's
now
where it came from.
the one we didn't talk about, and I'm gonna show my age here, and we'll see how many people get it. We didn't talk about bumbles. How can we not talk about that one, DA?
Robbie, by all means, go right ahead.
Yukon Cornelius would not be happy that we left Bumble out. Because Bumbles bounce, you know.
Yep.
See? Cat and Rip Fist got it. Bumbles
There you
bounce.
go. Bumbles bounce.
Wahoo! Sorry, I had to.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's technically not off track, though, because that was a Bigfoot-type creature.
Yeah, it was. But, folks, again, don't listen to anybody that claims that they've got all the answers. Do some digging, do some research, look into this for yourself. If you're a skeptic and you're on the fence, those links I've posted tonight of just Native American terms and terms from around the world should be enough to at least make you scratch your head and think. There has got to be more to it than just, like I would joke about the guy that they used to interview on television that had the bibbed overalls on with no t-shirt, one strap undone. Yeah, I saw the Sasquatch and he came into trailer park, but he stole my chickens. It's not like that. There are people from all walks of life all over the planet that are seeing these creatures. And, they can't ridicule us all. They can try to claim that these creatures don't exist, but the more and more we dig and the more and more we understand that we're not the only ones that are seeing them, the harder it is for them to pull the wool over your eyes. These things are out there, and there are a 1,000 different names for them all over the world.
I would venture to say that you're right. There's probably over 1,000. Because I would say we probably hit 70-ish tonight, maybe 75.
Mm-hmm.
We might not have specifically talked about every one of those, but you mentioned, I would say, a safe estimate would be 75.
Well,
and
we
you said
touched on every continent. We touched on every
and you
continent.
said we just scratched the surface of the list that you were looking at. So
yeah. I mean, we could do, if we really wanted to do a deep dive, we could pull up enough information where we could do a show on each type. We could do a Mapinguari show. We could do a Genosqua show. Because that information exists. It is reported from all over the world. And there may be times, especially in some of the more interesting cases where we've got confirmed, cases of people going missing, where we may dedicate an entire show to different types from different parts of the world. We could do a different type every night for the next 5 years and probably not run out of shows.
Yeah, it's something like if you wanted to do like we talked about earlier when you said, we thought, okay, maybe the skunk ape and wood boogers are so, but there are enough types that are far enough apart where you could leave out the ones that, or just talk about one specific type. That if you want to talk about the skunk apes and add wood boogers in with that, but then there's plenty enough that are far enough apart to where you can tell that they're the same creature, but there's enough characteristical differences that you would, like you said, we would have a year's worth of shows just doing that, even if you group some of them together.
And there's an explanation for that right in front of us. I mean, look at bears. Bears are the perfect example. And we'll even narrow it farther down. Let's look at the black bears, specifically black bears. Black bears here in the lower 48. Now, I'm not counting black bears that are indigenous to Canada and Alaska. I'm just talking the lower 48. There are at least 3 different subspecies of black bears here in the lower 48. At least 3. 4 if you count the albino ones, because there's a whole group of albino ones up near the Canadian border, and they don't know why. They're just all of them are just completely white. They're not polar bears. They are a species of black bear that is white, and it seems to breed true to the population because every one of them in this particular area are have white fur. So just black bears alone. If you take a black bear from the East Coast and put it side by side in the same enclosure in a zoo with a black bear that's from the California coast or the Pacific Northwest, while you can immediately tell they're both black bears, you can also see very noticeable characteristics that are different in each one. And it's because they've adapted to different climates. They've adapted to different environments and different food sources. And if that can happen in one species of bear, it can certainly explain why we've got so many regional variances in Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm. Well, and perfect example of that when you talk about food, look at killer whales. I mean, killer whales, depending on where they're at, their hunting behavior and what they eat are completely and totally different. You know, you got the ones that hunt seals on the beach line that have taught themselves to beach themselves hunting seals. That's not a natural behavior, but that's something that they've learned and taught generation after generation. Then you got the ones in South Africa who eat livers out of great white sharks, and that's all they eat. You got some that hunt out, the pelagic ones that hunt out in the open ocean that eat nothing but fish. You got the ones in Antarctica who hunt by using that what do you call it, a bow wave, whatever, where they swim towards the ice flow and then dive right at the very end and use that wave to wash them off. Those are all orcas. They're all killer whales, but they've all adapted different hunting styles to different food sources depending on what area that they live in. That proves our point right there, what we're talking about, that the same type of animal can have vastly different behaviors depending on what environment they are in and what food source they're having to go after. That proves it right there.
I totally agree. And when you look at the Native Americans, more than 100 different tribes, each having different names, and you look at the ones we've shared from around the world, that there's probably the ballpark of 1,000 different regional names that we didn't even touch on for the similar creature across the globe. When you take that into consideration, which is harder to believe, that these things exist or that somebody hoaxed all that?
Now, you know my answer to that.
At this point, folks, I think for you to not believe, you've got to be willfully avoiding reality. You've got to refuse to believe the preponderance of evidence. Because I can tell you, and Robbie can tell you, we've sent people to prison on less evidence than this.
Well, yeah,
and that's not counting track evidence or DNA evidence or hair evidence or observed eyewitness encounters. This is just the preponderance of different cultures across different parts of the world that had no contact describing a similar creature.
I heard something the other day, and it was aimed at a different source, but you can use it here because all of us have experienced this. If the KGB did a study back during the Cold War, that if you and they didn't use the word berate, but I'm gonna use the word berate because I don't remember exactly how they phrased it. But basically, if you put somebody on blast and you really just did downgrade them and humiliate them about their beliefs, and for like, I think they said 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is, that it doesn't matter how much evidence you put in front of them, they'll never see or agree with the truth again. Now they obviously were talking about it, doing it for another,
like brainwashing people.
But you could think you can look at it in these terms. How many times have you heard these scientists and these smart people and these people who think they know more than anybody else have said stuff like, "You're crazy. It's mass hysteria. It's a hoax. That's all it is. This could never exist. There's not this. There's not that." How many times have you heard that on mainstream TV and mainstream media in general? You don't ever hear two people. I mean, not say ever, but you rarely hear two people of equal academic terms having an actual debate on whether or not these things could exist. It's always, you hear the people who say they can't exist and the people who think they exist are idiots, but they won't give the same amount of time to the person like Jeff Meldrum, who is that smart, who says, yes, they do exist. They won't give him the same amount of time
Right.
that they'll give the other person.
Look at it like this. Say 200 years ago or 300 years ago. Let's say you were from Europe, okay? But long before Europeans started like trying to colonize or move into Africa, when the very first contact was being made in Africa by Europeans, what do you think the reaction of the first European when a local told him, yeah, we've got these 12-foot deer out here with a 17-foot neck? The first person that was told about a giraffe went, bullshit. That doesn't exist. Oh, son of a bitch, there it is. Holy crap.
I mean, like the example we used earlier, pandas. There's no such thing as a black and white bear that lives in the forest and eats bamboo.
Grass. Yeah.
Son of a bitch, there it is.
Holy crap. I was wrong. I get to name it.
Yeah, I mean,
In modern times, yeah, there's no such thing as a 6-foot bipedal ape that hunts lions. Oh, son of a gun, there it is. Holy crap. Guess we're wrong.
let's call it the billy ape.
Yeah, because it's from the Billy region of the Congo.
Yeah.
But 20 years ago, nobody would have believed you for a second. You said there's a carnivorous 6-foot freaking chimp that uses tools and hunt lions.
So, like I said, I think circumstantially, at the very least, we've laid enough out there that it's hard to ignore. There is so much evidence out there that it is, even somebody who is as skeptical as they come could not, if you sit there and look at everything that's out there and everything that's available, all the footprints, all the photos, all the sightings from, like you said, not just Billy Bob in the trailer park, but doctors and lawyers and police officers and good, credible people that if they made a statement about anything else, any crime that was committed, that would be more than enough to convict somebody and send them to jail. But it isn't enough for somebody to say, oh, you're crazy. I mean, that's as good as it gets when it comes to that kind of stuff.
If you walked up to a police officer on the street tomorrow and said, hey, a guy in a black hoodie and blue jeans just jumped me and took my wallet, they're going to get on the radio and they're going to put out, hey, we've got somebody stole a wallet, black hoodie, blue jeans, basic description, and they're going to go take your word and start investigating immediately. But if you walk up to a park ranger and go, hey, I was walking down the trail and this big 7-foot hairy thing knocked me down and took my backpack, they're going to go, yeah, what's in that canteen?
Yeah. And that's my point, is unless you've got a narrative that you've been told to stick to and spread, or unless you're just that dense, you cannot look at all this evidence, the preponderance of evidence, if you will, and say with any measure of certainty that, oh, yes, this is a hoax. Because just for the sheer amount and the variation of how far spread this whole phenomenon is, just for all that, you can't look at it and say, oh, yeah, definitively this is a hoax.
And you can't say just a couple hundred people here in the States have claimed to have seen them. We know for a fact there are thousands of reports from credible witnesses here in the United States, and that's just the ones that came forward. But if you look at the people all over the world that have seen similar creatures, the number jumps into the millions.
Well, this is, I told you earlier about the conversation my dad and I were having. This put it in perspective for me, because he was talking about what kind of led him into believing me and really starting to believe that these things existed. He said, if you got 100% of eyewitness statements, and you take 50% of those away and say those 50%, and this is just the United States. I'm not talking about worldwide. I'm just talking about just the United States. You take 50% away, and that's 50% are lying. Then you take 25% and say, okay, these people are kind of crazy, whatever. Basically, boil it down to, let's say you've only got 3 to 5% of that 100% that's credible. That's still a number that's bordering on hundreds of thousands of sightings. So are those hundreds of thousands of people all having mass hysteria and all together? And that's just if you look at it and take that way and say, okay, I'm just going to shave this off for this, and I'm going to shave this off for this. In 3 to 5%, you're still going to have a massive number of sightings.
Well, here's the thing. If you take 1,000 reports and you dismiss 999 of them, and you take one report and say, this guy's telling the absolute truth, that means it's there.
Yeah.
It's there. It doesn't matter the percentage. If even one person is telling the truth, it's out there. And across the planet, we're talking millions of eyewitnesses over the last 200-300 years. However long people have been seeing it. Are they all lying?
Well, that's what they want you to believe.
Right. That is exactly what they want you to believe. But
that
there's just entirely too much that says otherwise.
There's that narrative that they're supposed to spread.
All right, little Patty. Thanks for being here.
Not little Patty.
Folks, I hope we've given you plenty to think about. And I posted the links in there. You're free to check those out. Those are publicly available on the internet. I didn't make those up. I didn't pull them out of my butt to just talk about it and blow smoke. Every one of those are researchable. They're seeing these things all over the world. So I hope we've given you food for thought. And if you were even thinking about being a skeptic, I hope this at least makes you have an open mind to the possibility they're out there. Because even if you don't believe in it, if you walk outside late one night because you thought the raccoons were in your trash can and you come nose to nose with one of these things, it's better to be mentally prepared for what you just ran into than on something's dinner menu.
Because that paradigm shift's not going to be fun if you ain't mentally prepared for it.
Yeah, that is going to be a bad moment in your life when you go, oh my God, these things do exist. I would rather be prepared for them to exist than wander around a corner in a trail and find one.
Because here's the thing. Speaking from somebody who has seen one and had multiple encounters, it's still, every encounter I have is still like, oh my God. I don't think, but also I don't want for it to ever be, or to lose that wonder and that excitement and that, but I just don't see how that could, I guess if at one point in our life, which I doubt it'll ever happen in our lifetime, DA, but
soft disclosures, it might just be, one day they go, see, we've been telling you for years.
But I don't think that it would be as commonplace to where it's like seeing a lion or a tiger at the zoo, because for me,
I don't think they're ever going to have a Sasquatch enclosure at the St. Louis Zoo.
But for me, if I go to the zoo and I see a lion or a tiger or any kind of big cat or a bear or something, I still have that wonderment and that almost like that childlike, oh man, that is so cool. So I don't see how, if I could still have that over something that we know is here, because it'd just be so all, because we all know that these animals exist, but we all know we can go. There's probably a zoo, and everybody that's in the chat right now has probably got a zoo within driving distance that can go see these animals. They're alive. They're there. That they exist. But even though I know that, it's still like the Columbia Zoo in South Carolina, when they got that gorilla exhibit years ago, and that was just like amazing. I mean, I've seen countless gorillas on TV, but to go and stand and actually watch them, it was amazing. But I still get
another thing about going to those zoos and seeing those animals, if you're going to be out in the national parks or walking trails or hunting or fishing or backpacking, it's quite one thing to see a bear, but with 6 inches of glass, a plexiglass between you. It's another when it's 6 feet away, and and there's nothing between you but open air.
done that too.
Me too. And it is a butt puckering moment.
Hey, I told you this story, DA, but remember the story I told you about when I went to my tracking class?
Hmm?
Was on day 2, I believe. And I was on part of the evolution where me and another guy were the ones being pursued. So we were told, go about a quarter of a mile, zigzag, do all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And we were to the point where we were not supposed to be leaving a whole lot of track, a whole lot of trail, but we were still supposed to every once in a while scuff up something or whatever. So me and him walked down. We walked about a quarter of a mile away, found us a couple trees. He was about 15, 20 yards away from me. We were both sitting down. We start hearing something, and I went get his attention. He looked at me, and I'm like, he said, "Yeah, I hear it too." We started looking around. Next thing I know, we look there was 2 trees about 30 feet in front of us. Look, and here go 2 black bear cubs straight up those trees. That was amazing, number 1. But number 2, it was freaking scary because where was Mama?
Mama's around there somewhere.
And the thing is, we had rifles, we had our ARs, but per class rules at that time, we didn't have no ammo. And of course, I had my Glock on my side. I'm sure he had his, but I didn't want to take a chance on that 9mm Glock being able to stop a pissed off mama bear.
Yeah.
Because if she was behind us and the cubs were in the tree, we were both screwed. Luckily, we never saw Mama. But I was never so glad to be caught as I was right then when we got the rest of the crew up there, because Chief McCall, who was our instructor, his gun was loaded. So when he came up, we were like, "Glad you're here, Chief." He said, "Why?" And we're like, right there, pointing up the tree. He said, "Oh crap, let's get out of here."
Let's put some distance there.
Yeah.
But that's another great example. I mean, it's a whole different animal when it's theoretical, but when you run nose to nose with one, it's going to be it'll change your world. It'll change how you view these things. You can no longer keep your head in the sand. And unfortunately, no matter how much evidence and how much information we present, there are going to be those people who will only ever believe it when they see one face to face. And that's just the way it is. Those are people that you will never convince, no matter how much logic or how much facts you present. But I would hope that if you take anything away from tonight's show, you take this away, that it's not just here in the U.S. It's not just on the North American continent. It is all over the world, and it's been seen by millions of people from all walks of life. Hoaxing that is virtually impossible.
Yeah, that, to put that in perspective, and I think I kind of touched on it earlier, for the sheer number of footprints, sightings, and photos and things like that that are cataloged year-round, it would take a network of probably in the 200 or 300 of thousands of people that worked constantly, nonstop, day and night, just to perpetuate that kind of hoax.
It would have to be an industry in itself of just perpetuating the Bigfoot
worldwide.
And I don't know about you, but that's to me, that's harder to swallow than Bigfoot being out there in the first place. And that would be assuming I had had any of the experiences that I have had. I know Noah, Robbie, and we got pretty goddamn close to something down in Joe Bald that night. Robbie and I were pretty convinced. I don't know about Noah, but I'm pretty convinced that was a dog man. And we were way closer than we really needed to be. But having said that, you have an encounter like that, you have an up close encounter, it will definitely make sure that you question everything you've been told. Um, I question everything now. What else have we've been lied to about? What else is out there? Uh, you know, don't let anybody tell you what the facts are. Do a little research. Read some of these websites. Take a look at the encounters. Listen to some of the firsthand stories. Like look at the episode we had Fred roll. Watch Fred when he's talking about his counter and tell me he's lying.
And that goes for any time Fred's been on. Go back and listen to any time Fred's been on with us and he's told that story and watch his reaction. It is identical every single time. And there's one he's on that he had his dogs in because he was in his tent, I believe, at that time.
Yeah.
And he was getting so physically upset about it. His dog started
coming to him like if you're upset, your dog will come check on you. Anybody that owns a dog knows that dogs can sense your mood. And Fred was so upset the dogs were coming into camera and trying to get in his lap like, hey, what's going on, are you okay? To me, Fred's reaction was visceral. It is not the reaction of somebody that's being deceptive. Fred was physically reliving a traumatic moment, and I've talked to a lot of people who had similar reactions.
Yeah. I went back and watched our episode where me and Johnny were from the LBL, and I went back and watched my eyes and my eye movement and the way I was acting. I wasn't acting like my normal self.
Well, you were on alert, man. You were in a dangerous area.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I was like, what in the world am I doing? I was just like,
when you're in LBL, you're on edge. Plain and simple. I've been there. I was on edge the whole time I was there, and for good reason. But yeah, again, folks, if you take anything away from tonight, I hope you take that it's not just us. It's not just the United States. It's not just North America. It's a worldwide phenomenon, and people are seeing these things on the daily, literally everywhere. That's where we'll start winding things up. I hope we've given you a lot of food for thought. Before we do, I want to mention the 22 a Day Foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is 22 too many. We lose just as many first responders. You can check tillvalhallaproject.com and see some of the fantastic stuff they're doing to help veterans. You can look at the Officer Down Memorial page or odmp.com and look at the line of duty deaths and even off-duty deaths of officers that we've lost all across the country. And many of those were by their own hand. And that is a horrible thing because we all fight demons and we all need to know that there is someone there who will fight those demons with you. And I've got a really good network of people that I can call on if I need to share, or if I need a shoulder to lean on, or if I just want to just talk. It doesn't even have to be about what's bothering me. And folks, if you don't think you have someone like that, you do. I would rather hear about, I'd rather hear your story than read your obituary. Reach out. I'm happy to bend an ear. But look around you. You will find more people around you that care than you realize. And folks, if you've got friends and family that are first responders or veterans or still active duty, reach out to them. Be the one that reaches out and lets them know that they're not fighting that battle alone. Because sometimes it's the ones you think have it together the most, the ones that are always in a good mood that need it the most. You never know when that, hey, dude, are you okay? Or, hey, you want to come have a beer? That might be what pulls them back from the edge. And 22 times a day, people are not getting pulled back from that edge. And that's a tragedy. So support the 22 a Day Foundation, support the Till Valhalla Project, because that really does go to help veterans. They're buying limbs for people that have lost limbs. They're buying service animals. They're helping people with therapy. They're doing a hell of a lot more than our own VA is doing. So if you're if you're a veteran or you want to support your veterans, check out Till Valhalla Project, because that really does go to help veterans. I can't say the same for a lot of these larger charities, but I can definitely say that for Till Valhalla. I've got a bunch of their shirts. I've got several of their products. They're all good quality, and I'm smile knowing that each time that everything I do, everything I purchase, 95% of that's going right back to veterans charities. So you can put a smile on your face anytime you get them, because they got some great stuff. So definitely check them out. Again, if you're a first responder or a veteran in any capacity, remember there are people that care. Don't be afraid to reach out, because we've all had to do it at one point or another in our lives. Don't be ashamed. Again, there are people that care about you. And if you have a veteran or a first responder in your life, reach out to them, check on them, make sure that they know you care. And let's get 22 a day down to 0. And I think that's a great goal for all of us. So we're gonna end the show with a toast. We've been doing it for a while, and it's something I intend to keep doing for a good long time. It's from an old Irish drinking song called "The Parting Glass." So it doesn't matter what you're drinking, water, Kool-Aid, tea, something a little stronger, whatever you're drinking. If you would grab a glass and join us in the closing toast. The song is called "The Parting Glass," and it talks about the end of the day when people are leaving the bar and going home. But when you read the lyrics and you listen to the song, which you should definitely check out the song. You can find it on YouTube by a dozen different singers. But the song is talking about saying goodbye to those who aren't there to lift that glass with us anymore. It's a beautiful song. It's a haunting tune, and I'll share part of it with you. So raise your glasses with me. But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night, and joy be to you all. Good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on Ex Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.